Well, it is a pleasure for me to be able to introduce Raymond. I've met with him and talked to him a little bit about the city and where it's going and what he is doing with the city. And he's relatively new, I guess. Having been here before Roy left was maybe a start, but I think when he got into the real, I got to run it all. He has found considerable adjustments to be made in terms of personnel and the new growth of the city and those kinds of things. And Raymond is well qualified, having done a lot of city manager type work in Texas. And I'll let him incorporate that background into his speech and where he thinks the city is going and what we need to do to meet what is projected growth of when we get over 200,000. Why Raymond's got it all planned out. He knows exactly what we're going to look like, how much money you're going to have to spend to do it. And so with that, I will, Raymond, come up and help us understand the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been about almost coming on 2 years in January that I've been in Greeley. Tom is right. When I first came on in the city of Greeley, I came on as the deputy city manager over community building. And community building was really all your outward facing departments, from community development, economic development, public works, water, sewer, culture, parks, and recreation from that standpoint. So quite a few departments. You know, when I came in, I thought I was going to be the deputy city manager, let Roy take the bullets, and I do a lot of the planning. But 6 months into my tenure with the city of Greeley, Roy came to me and said, "You know what, Raymond, I'm done. I'm about to retire." Mayor John Gates came to me at that time and told me, it was a unanimous decision. The council wanted me to kind of serve as the interim city manager for the city while we did a search for the next city manager of the job, and also to give me the opportunity to see if this is something that I would want to do long-term in the city. Serving in that capacity, I learned so much about the city, the people within the city, the organization itself, and it was a no-brainer for me at that point in time, looking at all the positive things that the city had going for itself, that I wanted to step into this role permanently from that standpoint. Now we are almost a year into this role as permanent city manager here with the city of Greeley. And there's been a lot of things going on. Tom spoke briefly about some of the growth that we were experiencing as a community. Currently, right now, we're roughly around 111, 112,000 people within the city of Greeley. Our projections, and this is working with the state demographer from this standpoint, and these are conservative numbers. In the next 20 to 25 years, Greeley will be 260,000 people. That is more than doubling our population. A full built out Greeley is roughly 450,000 people. So we will be what I would say from a population standpoint, Colorado Springs of the North, from that standpoint of a major city and providing services for a major city. When we look at some of those demographics of kind of the last census and how we're growing, 96% of the growth of this city in the last census were people of color. And I will tell you that is something that you typically do not see, but truly speaks to the diversity of our community and the multiculturals that we have within our community as well. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth, but we're seeing a tremendous amount of diversity within that growth in our community. And some people say, well, Raymond, how are we anticipating getting that big? Well, if you pay attention to any of our council meetings, every single council meeting has been some type of development project going on. We have 5 master plan communities that are planned for out west Greeley, which are roughly 11,000 rooftops that will be coming out west. And that will bring in a tremendous amount of growth into our community from that standpoint. So all this growth happening and everything that is evolving and changing in our economy and our world has really put a focus from a organizational standpoint for us to focus on how do we plan on growing strategically from that standpoint. What things do we need to put in place today that will help us manage the growth for the future and provide services for a community of that size? I brought the council together in February to really look at a strategic plan and kind of what are the key focus areas that this council would be focused on that's going to truly lay out a vision for this community as a whole. They really developed 7 key focus areas for this community. One of them was business growth, community vitality, quality of life, high performing government, housing for all, infrastructure and mobility, and last but not least, safe and secure communities. And when you look at these 7 key focus areas, you go to any city, these are going to be the 7 things that truly drive a community and really tell us what is the makeup of that community. Those are things that we have focused on as an organization. From there, staff worked with developing a strategic plan for the organization that is on the City of Greeley's website that you can view. And we want to be transparent with that from the standpoint of what are we looking at as an organization? What are the measures that we're looking at to show, are we making any progress on those key focus areas? And that's a way to be transparent with the community from that standpoint and get their voices on it as well. But with this growth, there's other planning that needs to take place. There's planning from the standpoint of an economic development strategic plan that we will be getting into in 2023. There's also a housing plan that we will be looking at in 2023 as well, in a community assessment that will be run by our Culture, Parks, and Recreation Department to really hear from our citizens. What do we want from amenities, from a culture standpoint in our community that's going to truly help cultivate our community as we move forward and grow as a community? There's a ton of things going on. We have a ton of new faces in our organization, and we're starting to look at how do we do town hall meetings as well too, to get out in the community so people can meet some of these new faces that are in the organization and give some of our new leadership the opportunity to meet citizens within the community as a whole. So there's a ton of new things going on in this community and what we're trying to shape this community around to truly have some vitality in our community and creating places of destination for our community. If you're not aware, we have a new park that council approved about a month ago that will go into East Greeley that will really rival what you see in Windsor from Windsor's park and lake attributes that they have. So we're looking at these type of amenities and looking how we can cultivate these type of amenities within our community as a whole. There will be a ton of things that will roll out. We have a community citizen survey that will be rolling out shortly as well too, where we really want to hear from citizens regarding the quality of services that are being provided to them by the city, but what are some of the things that they want to see us enhance from a service delivery standpoint? And from also, if there's a new service, what are those new services that you want to see from your local government as well? Things are changing. One of the biggest topics that we are constantly hearing now is homelessness. And what are we doing as an organization to try to address homelessness within our community? I can tell you right now, this is just not a city issue. And there is no silver bullet that's going to resolve homelessness for our community as a whole. But I believe with the partnerships that we have gained with the county and the county willing to work with us and us putting our heads together, we're going to come up with some outlets for resources and services that try to help some of our most vulnerable population within our community as a whole. And that's really the main part of that, is connecting people to services and having outreach to kind of know who they are and what they need from the standpoint to get them off the street. And one of the main things that we're focused on, a portion of that population, is our chronic homeless. And these are the individuals that suffer the most from mental illness, from drug addictions. Our police chief would tell you this is not a situation that police can solve, and it's not a police issue to send them to the county's area for the sheriff's office to have to deal with them as well. This is something that we as a community, along with our nonprofits, are going to have to work together to try to resolve some of these issues that we're facing as a community. Because I can tell you now, as this city grows, this problem grows. We become an urban hub. And some of the struggles that we're facing right now is we're facing because we are becoming that urban hub, coming from being a rural community to a community where people come to for resources. We hear all the time of people traveling even from Cheyenne to Greeley for resources. And that's going to become even a bigger issue as we grow as a community. Our transportation network, the amenities that we offer as a community from commercial, retail, eateries, are all things that we're going to be looking at as we continue to grow and plan for this growth as a community that we know that our citizens want to see within their city. So that's in the speech. I will throw this out too, because this is always an interesting fact, and I didn't know this as well too. Greeley, Colorado is the youngest community in Colorado. I can see it in this room. Average age of 31. Average age of 31 in our community. So we have a lot of young families within our community, and that's due to several things. The housing market. We still are very affordable, Colorado affordable, as I will say, place to be. But that won't last forever. We won't always be able to hold that title. Sooner or later, this community will be battling with the Fort Collins and the Windsor from the standpoint of housing prices. It's constantly steadily rising on us as a community. And there may be some decisions from a city standpoint and an elected body standpoint, what we may have to make decisions to have affordable housing within our community as a whole. And those are things that will be taken under consideration as we grow. I think if anybody paid attention to the elections and things, there was an initiative that passed from the state for affordable housing that will have other impacts on other services as well. But it did pass from the standpoint of looking at what can we do to garner more resources for affordable housing in the state. It will take a commitment, and there are asking for commitments from cities to really make a 3-year investment into this as well, and to allocate funds to that if the city goes after that funding for affordable housing that the state is making available. But this is something that we're looking at as a city. The age part is always an interesting thing to me, looking at this city, but it tells you how this city is evolving and the mixture that we have. We have a very diverse community, not only from ethnicity, from age, race, so this is a unique place in Northern Colorado. And this is things that you won't see in other places in Colorado outside of Denver from that standpoint. So this will continue to be a place of destination. We just saw in Forbes that Greeley was ranked number 5 as one of the best places to live in Colorado. So we know we will continue to rise, and people will continue to have their eyes on this community as a place to move and live. So at this point in time, I know y'all don't want to hear me talk all day. I'll turn it over to you to ask any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
When you talk about affordable housing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the board for connection, independent living. And our biggest concern is not enough units being designated for people with disabilities. Is the city looking at putting that requirement?
It is. It's we have to. And when I said earlier that we're looking at our housing plan, we keep talking about affordability within our community, but we have a bigger issue than affordability. We lack the inventory across the spectrum of housing within our community. And we're going to have to be progressive and aggressive as well too, regarding how we're going to recruit developers that are looking to make those type of buildings, build those type of housing within our community as a whole. But that is a component of our housing plan that we will take a look at from a disability standpoint, and even what we're providing from that avenue as well. I'm gonna go back and I'll move back forward.
When you start getting 250,000 people, that's a real awkward place to be. You're not a town, you're not a big city. At some point, Greeley's gonna have to start building up. And I know that people take that. Are you laying any groundwork to sort of get people ready for that kind of thing?
You know, we went through that in our comprehensive plan. Still, it did not pass. We still love the view of our mountains. We don't want to build too high right now. But I think that's something as we continue to grow as a city, that is going to be the question. How high do we grow up from the standpoint to create more density in our city? What you're seeing in our downtown area right now is unprecedented for Greeley from the standpoint of the multifamily and the mixed-use developments that you're seeing. Thanks to Richmark and their investment into our downtown area, they are leaders within that realm of what you're seeing from a growth standpoint. And that question always comes up from the standpoint, will we change our standards regarding how high will we allow the development community to develop? Honestly, that's an elected body question. I will provide the pros and cons to both of that situation, but that will be a decision that our body will have to take under consideration as we continue to grow as a city, and we may want to become more denser as a city as well too. Yes, sir.
Use some examples like 34.
Mhm.
You raise the point of amenities, but surveys that you guys are potentially going to roll out to, like in other communities that are of a similar makeup to ours, age and demographic and all that kind of stuff. What are some amenities that are out there that Greeley doesn't have? Because honestly, like my scope, I couldn't even, if you asked me that directly, like, I don't even know what I'd say I want.
Okay.
We don't.
Where do you go to eat when you go out to eat? Where do you go to listen for live music? You know, these type of amenities that a younger generation, and this is mostly your millennial population, is looking at from that standpoint. What options do they have for places of destination? What options are we providing from the standpoint of open space, park and recreation facilities? You know, all these type of things that we're looking at as an organization to say, okay, what do we want to be? And we can't define that as an organization. The citizens have to be able to define that, and we develop roadmaps of how we can achieve that from the standpoint and bring that forward to the council for their approval. But those are the things that we're looking at. We want to hear from the community, what's driving you to Fort Collins? What's driving you to Lubbock? What are those amenities that you would say, hey, why don't we have these things here? Why don't we have a lake that we can go in Greeley? These are the type of things that we're looking at as an organization to say, okay, when we look at places that people consider destinations, what are they providing their citizens from that standpoint to create those places of destination? And do we have those type of amenities? And if we don't, what can we do to create those if our citizens want that within their community? My biggest fear is that this community turns into a bedroom community, because a bedroom community can't support a population of 260,000, let alone 450,000. So the restaurants that we have, the commercial, the retail that we're able to bring into our community will help support a community. And it creates a community where people can live, work, and play. And, you know, the studies show your ability to be able to create that truly creates a resilient city, and your ability to withstand economic downturns from that standpoint. And that's what we want to build. We want to build a city that in the future, other cities look at and say, hey, they did it right. And that's the model that you need to use if you're a growing city, that you need to follow that recipe. Yes, sir.
You're dealing with economies of scale and creating efficiency in terms of cost of living in the city.
Yep.
And when you start getting into a city of that size, that's a real challenge, because studies have shown that, you know, the most economically run cities are like around 100,000 people. You start doubling that population. How do you look at planning cost of living here? Not the cost of housing, but the overall cost of running the city.
There's multiple different avenues to look at that. When we look at economies of scale for our city, what industries are we bringing in? What are we doing to diversify our portfolio from industries, jobs within our community? Helps keep down that cost is. We're reliant on one industry. That typically will drive your cost from the standpoint of how to manage your city as a whole. When we look at service delivery, we know costs will go up. That's inevitable from the standpoint of our ability to manage and service a population of that size. But when I start talking about us not becoming a bedroom community, that's what supplements that. The amount of sales tax that we're able to generate and the amount of money that we're able to generate from a hotel and lodging tax that can supplement some of our infrastructure and amenities will help towards that. So we have to be able to look at what are we doing where we are attracting people to come visit our community and spend their money in our community as well. You know, what concerts are we offering? What other amenities that we offering as a community that's truly going to help us supplement our base of our population? That's going to be the key. Some of it as well too. As we continue to grow further out west, we're going to have to create service centers. It's only efficient for us to be able to do that. You know, we're not going to be able to be this centrally hubbed organization where we're in just one aspect of the city and we send out resources from that direction as well too. Now there is an upfront cost in that, but 20, 25 years down the road, you start paying that back from that standpoint and the cut down of what you're using from fuel and other assets to be able to provide services to our community. Another aspect of that is going to be technology and how we implement technology into our organization as a whole from a service delivery standpoint. And how are we creating that? So there's many different avenues that we're looking at to say, okay, how do we maintain an even cost for our citizens without it just being something crazy that they're paying to be able to have services? But some of that is state legislative as well too. The state has some control over that as well too. And we just have to stay cognitive of that as well too as we grow as a community as well. And we do have a intergovernmental relations arm of our organization as well too that's looking at that as well too. From a state legislative standpoint, what do we need to be on top of to ensure that it doesn't have impacts? Because think about this. There's no other city outside of Aurora probably that has the growth potential that we have. Not even Denver. So most of all cities are just infill development. And a lot of them don't want to grow anymore. Fort Collins, they don't have the resources to grow anymore. Neither does Windsor, Loveland, and all those other cities in northern Colorado. They're landlocked and they don't have the resources. And we know a ton of people are looking to move to northern Colorado from that standpoint. So we're kind of uniquely positioned to have, you know, for that type of growth and get those type of amenities. And those type of amenities typically don't come until you have the rooftops. And those rooftops are coming for our community as well.
So when you say resources, are you water?
Yes, sir. Water and land.
Yeah, and another question, when developers are buying these areas, and they're gonna build homes and whatnot, how much property do they have to donate, like the park, and then also I'm assuming for schools?
There's a formula there for it. And that's an interesting conversation because actually our council will be looking at that as well too. Most of the development now from a housing standpoint is driven by metro districts. And in that, metro districts have a certain standard that the city has adopted. The city for the longest has adopted the state standard for metro districts. And the council will be looking at enhancing that from the standpoint of increasing the amount of trails, open space, park areas that we are requiring developers to have within these metro districts. We don't want to have cookie cutter communities. We want our communities to have character from that standpoint and stand out. So when people are looking at Greeley and looking at Greeley as a place to live, they're looking at it from a standpoint, not only from the type of development, the quality of development that we have, but what else do the communities have to offer from a recreational standpoint? So we'll be looking at that. Right now, it's bare minimum from the standpoint. You don't necessarily have to put a trail in. We will say right now, we would advise you to put a trail in. No. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at how can we create trail systems and parks within communities. We want to create and build complete communities. And that's going to be the huge initiative as we move forward. Yes, sir. Now I'll move them back up here.
As you guys grow,
Urban separated.
mainly for like long, like companies, for like safety, fire, EMS, who's gonna be there, who's gonna be part of that?
When it's unincorporated, it falls into the county's area. If it's within us, and we have MOUs, memorandums of understanding. If we're closer, we'll provide that service, and they pay us for those services that we provide. But we want to keep those buffers. We don't want to incorporate everything where Northern Colorado looks like Texas or California from that standpoint, where you don't know the difference if you are in Loveland from Fort Collins to Greeley. So we want to be able to keep those characteristic differences and keep those buffers and keep open space. We just bought Sherview, which is over 1,000 acres of open space between us and Windsor from that standpoint. So we will continue to look at how can we even buy more open space to kind of keep that buffer between us and other communities. Because we already have people that are just rubbing right next to us from Garden City and Evans from that standpoint. And we don't want all that to continue to encroach upon us from that manner. But when we look at, are we looking at annexing other land? If we look at annexing any other land, it would be northeast. That land up there, but nothing further west. I hear now I'm coming back. Mhm.
You mentioned, 5 major housing developments.
Mhm.
Can you share how much of that is gonna be west of the third Ave?
All. Mhm. 11,000 rooftops west of 83rd, and all within Windsor School District. So if you're paying attention,
From the 83rd all the way to 90.
all the road to County Road 17, all the way to County Road 17. That's Delantero, which is a massive metro district that is coming on. Delantero. Del. And Delantero has what they're projecting is about 5,000 rooftops within their community. And they even have more land to annex too. Yes, sir.
Bothers me is the more that we require, the more we do development entities within they cost money.
No question.
So talk about trying to keep housing affordable, but we're adding amenities that increase the cost.
Mhm.
So balancing that is going to be a real challenge to keep affordability for the 30 to 40-year-old category and yet have the amenities that draws it here. So how do you, what's the plan?
It's, we've got, in my eyes, what I've always foreseen is a healthy mix. When we talk about affordability and the amenities of the community, and that's why I said earlier, really it's not going to always just be this affordable community. I don't see how it's able to maintain that from the standpoint of when I talk about affordability from a housing market standpoint, because the development that is coming in, a lot of this development that's coming in are estate homes as well too. So when we look at from the standpoint of how we balance the economies of scale from the standpoint of keeping this community affordable, but still getting the amenities on hand, I don't have a clear-cut answer for it. I think it's going to be some trial and error in that, honestly, from that standpoint. Because no community has done it perfectly from that standpoint to be able to manage that. I think we're going to have to find out what's unique for us and what will work for us from that standpoint.
Having a new assistant city manager or
Mhm.
in housing and that, how is that gonna work with, you and I are both talking about United States.
Mhm.
Low income,
Mhm.
and how do we get the people on the street, housing and those kinds of things? Are we duplicating services? How do we get the coordination so that everybody that we're worried about it, but are we bringing it together and actually solving the problem?
I would say finally, yes. I think for a long time, we were operating in silos from that standpoint. You had United Way with what they were doing from a standpoint. Let's just take the homeless thing from the standpoint of what United Way was doing from a homeless standpoint, and then what we're talking about doing from a homeless standpoint. We did a study. We had a company out of Denver do a study for us, Urbanity, do a study on us regarding what are the gaps in our services as it relates to homelessness in our community. And what that came to show us was everybody was playing in their own sandbox from that standpoint. There wasn't a lot of collaboration going on. United Way, which the city gives money to for their cold weather shelter and navigation center, we did that and kind of just, we did our part. County for a long time was saying that's a city issue. This is for the first time in this organization, in this community, that we're seeing all these parties come together from a homeless standpoint and a sheltering and a housing standpoint. You know, we all just took a trip to Colorado Springs about a week or two ago now to really look at the model that Colorado Springs has from the standpoint of a housing and a sheltering standpoint. You had the county, you had the city, and you had United Way. That was the first time that has happened from that standpoint, where those three organizations were all focused on one thing, and that's resolving our sheltering and housing situation that we have in our community. The one issue that we have with our homeless population, we don't have enough beds in our community. And how do we increase the beds in our community for our homeless population? And then you have this thing I've heard 1,000 times. If you build it, they will come. They're coming anyway. That's not stopping it. We don't have the beds now, and they're still here, and they're coming in droves, and the numbers are increasing. But we have to find a way to better provide that service. And for the first time, the county and the city are on the same page of how that's going to happen. And we even brought in, I got you, Bonnie, we even brought in, as Tom spoke briefly about, assistant city manager to oversee kind of our homeless situation right now. And really look at how do we provide those wraparound services? How do we collaborate with United Way? How are we collaborating with our other nonprofits? How are we going to create a future? Because the city and the county don't want to be in the business of sheltering forever. How do we create a future 501c3 that can really help take the charge for our homeless population and leading and providing that service as a whole? But it's a collaboration, and it's us, everybody, laying all their cards on the table from that standpoint to say, what are we trying to resolve, and getting us all on the same page of what we're trying to work towards as a community. And I must say it's been very positive, because you don't always see that. And from the communities I've come from Dallas and from Amarillo, they didn't play well at all. And the same, Bunny did not come back.
So what's the best model you found? Do you mind sharing that?
You know, the Colorado Spring, I've seen all the models. You know, if you can do transitional housing that provides wraparound services for individuals in a facility, I've seen that to be the best. But you have success stories in that as well too. The key thing, and some of the things I'll share with you that I shared with the county, Scott James and that county commissioner and the chair, was it's leadership. It's leadership. Whoever's going to manage this, the success of it is truly going to be who is managing, who is the CEO of this shelter. Because if you have poor leadership over it, it's going to suck. We're going to still see people sleeping out in our parks. We're going to still see, you know, what you see in Denver from people just having tent cities up and down sidewalks. You're going to experience that. Up and down the Poodle River, you're going to experience that if we don't have proper leadership from that standpoint. And it may be one of those instances where we both have to come in and say we both have ownership in the operation of it. And I think that's something that we're going to be leaning towards, because we don't have a 501(c)(3) in this community that can manage that at this point in time. We're just not there yet. But do I feel that we could be there in the future? Yes. But we as a government may have to build the building blocks for that, for a 501(c)(3) to better step in the future to take charge of it for us. Yes, sir.
Yeah, And the community I came from, in California, had transitional housing,
Mhm.
and it provided not only temporary housing,
Yeah.
but training, job training,
Mhm.
the whole segment of services that are required. The other thing that we did was we created nonprofit development companies
Yeah.
that were able to acquire property through
Mhm.
grants, whatever, and build those housing units.
Mhm.
And that nonprofit managed
Mhm.
those units.
Yeah.
And that helped in providing housing for the homeless.
Shelters, yeah.
But it's a whole series of, and you and I can talk about it later.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
there are programs out there,
Mhm.
communities that have successful, they still have homeless, because
You're not gonna end
there are
homelessness.
people who want to be. They don't, you put them into a home, and 4 months later, they're back out in their tents,
Mhm.
because that's where they prefer to be.
Mhm.
But for the majority of them, they need that transition where maybe they get job training,
Mhm.
or
Those are
whatever
wraparound
their
services.
needs are, to get them back to their situation where they can afford. And the state has tons of housing vouchers that are going unused. And part of the problem is people are having trouble raising the money for deposits. That's
Mhm.
another program.
Mhm.
And there are nonprofits in this community that will provide assistance in
Mhm.
those cases. But people don't know about it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's been all disjointed for us too.
Yeah.
We have a lot of nonprofits within our community, but we never had someone really tying people and tying all our nonprofits together. So we're all on the same accord, especially from this initiative. And that's really why I saw a gap and say, hey, we need to pull somebody in to really help coordinate this for, and that's had success in other communities, coordinating, pulling these things together to really reduce. The one thing that we're looking at truly reducing, because you're not going to end homelessness. Anybody who tells you they're ending homelessness, they selling you snake oil. It's just not, it's not going to happen. Colorado is unique in that because we have this whole home free individuals, that people who don't have an issue at all, but they just want to be free. They want to be, as long as they can find an outlet to charge their phone, they're perfectly fine being out every day. And that's a component.
Where it's warm, and then they come back here.
Yeah. I don't understand why people want to be out here when it's like today. So that's just, it's unique. Very unique from that standpoint. Florida, I can understand. California, I can understand. Colorado, I can understand that. But that's some of the things that we're working on though as a whole.
Thank you very much, Raymond, that letting us know about all the opportunities and challenges that we have in our great community. Thank you very much. And Raymond, on your behalf, this stuffed animal will be going to a child at UC Health Greeley Hospital. So we appreciate that.